All right. Welcome again to another episode of the Apocalypse Podcast. Again, I am one co-host, Kyle. With me, my brother, as always.
Hi, I'm Taylor.
Tay-Tay, the jet plane.
Yeah, Tay-Tay, the jet plane, coming in for a landing.
I
hate this. Holy shit, this is so bad.
Let's just own it. We're owning
right.
this.
So
Today,
cool.
we're talking about Dexter, the TV show. We're going to talk about season 1 through 4 because
that's all you've watched.
Well, yes, and those of you who don't know, I think after season 4 is kind of when people widely regard the show as getting significantly worse. However, this was the spoiler I avoided telling you earlier, Taylor, when we were talking, was that I think the show got a lot worse in season 4, and I just didn't see it the first time through, but rewatching it recently Yeah, I hadn't seen this for about 10 years, honestly. Like, I watched it when it was airing, and then the end of season 4, you
could wrap the show at the end of season 4. You could write that ending, like, that could be the canon ending of the show, to me.
Almost,
is like this,
yeah.
Like, being like, oh, the cycle of violence, like, like, the violence begets more violence, like that wasn't the healthy way, and that, I don't know, that could be a message, right? And it kind of ends there. So I don't know.
Yeah, it's like, I think that also kind of feels like why both the previous time and this time I have felt a strong urge to stop watching after season 4 is because I don't know if we're going to be able to avoid spoilers, probably not. But the end of season 4 is so huge that it, like Taylor said, it feels like it could be either one, just an ending to the show that you're like, wow, okay, well, shit. Or it's frustrating and you're like, fuck this show, I don't want to watch it anymore. Both of those could, like, is kind of how you feel at the end of season 4. At least that's how I did. So,
we'll circle back to it, but
yeah, we will.
Right,
but for now...
Okay.
Yeah, this is going to be a spoiler. The show's been out for, since what, 2007
it's been
or something?
over for like a decade.
Oh my god, wait, it's almost been 20 years. It's 2025.
Yeah, dude, welcome to time.
No way.
It's all relative, and it relatively sucks.
I'm going to Google... I want to say it was 07 or 09 this show came out. It was 06. Holy shit, it really was like 20 years ago. Good lord.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyways, Dexter. A TV show that follows a serial killer named Dexter, but he only kills bad guys. He only kills people who are rapists or murderers and have escaped the justice system through, whatever means. Either they got the case thrown out from bad evidence or whatever. Just people who have escaped the justice system, even though they've done really heinous stuff. Dexter kills those people. And he's been taught a code called the Code of Harry, which was his adoptive father taught him. His adoptive father recognized that he had serial killer tendencies as a young boy, and he kind of realized it, of course, as Dexter grew up, and taught him a code of like, okay, you're not going to be able to resist these urges. No serial killers can, but I'm going to try to at least get you to kill people who deserve it. So that's the code he follows, and... as an audience, you are rooting for Dexter and you follow him because he kills serial killers, but he also is a serial killer himself because of that. So he's kind of sociopathic and he has to mimic people's emotions and learn social behaviors, and he's a little weird. And this is actually a huge talking point I wanted to bring up during this discussion we're having, is the parallel between... And I don't know if this, whatever, I'm just going to say it because we'll patch it up if it's offensive or something. But he was so autistic to me.
Oh, sure.
There were so, like, social autism, maybe some Asperger's or some...
no, I totally get what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah, like he would just stare at somebody that made a joke to him, and he's like, "Are you joking right now?" He would actually ask these questions a lot of times, and he would ask Rita, his girlfriend, like, "Are you trying to be mean? Like, what's happening?" He didn't understand a lot of things, and I don't know what the commentary is there of having a sociopathic serial killer parallel someone.
I think all it is that he's supposed to be showing that he doesn't have human connection, and autistic people have a hard time reading other people, so it's a similar.
Yeah, that's what it is.
So I don't.
Okay.
I think it's more of like, isn't it funny how that's kind of a parallel to autism, because there's a lot of those things, but I don't think. I think it's much more just trying to be. He has no human connection. That's all.
Well, and yeah, it's more so specifically what you just mentioned, that his inability to connect and understand people, and that's not something specific to sociopaths. Obviously, that's just a trait that we can have, and that's a trait that, you know, a lot of autistic people have, that you need to really be blunt and explain it to them because they don't understand the subtleties and the nuance of things, and that's the traits Dexter has. And so there were so many times where people are really mean to him, and I just felt bad for him because you can tell he just doesn't understand. But like Deb, his sister, she is just super foul-mouthed and mean, and she's really funny but sarcastic, and Dexter doesn't understand a lot of what she's saying a lot of the times. And when people are subtle and making implications, he doesn't understand it, and he makes multiple comments throughout multiple seasons of the show that he doesn't get people, and he wishes they would just tell him what they're thinking. And even the characters realize that too. Like, there's a moment in season 3 or 2 where Deb kind of says to Dexter, like, yeah, it's my fault for just hoping you can read my mind. She's like, I'll try to be more direct with what I'm thinking. Because she, you know, I guess we'll just like dive into the discussion here. Deb always has problems with boys. She dates like minimum 3 dudes per season, and she always has problems with them, and she always wants them to do certain things, but then doesn't directly tell them usually. It's the thing that I was just saying, where she kind of implies what she wants and then gets mad that the guys can't read her mind, but then she realizes it is her fault for not being direct, and like she kind of goes through that cycle a lot. And it's a problem that actually a lot of people in real life have, you know?
Yeah,
I've had that problem with my significant other, where it's,
well, she's being
you wish
a dumb
they
bitch.
would just, yeah, you wish they would just stop being a dumb bitch, and they don't. And it's like, man, I should just tell her, stop being a dumb bitch.
Yeah, that's no, I was gonna say we were talking about Deb specifically, and I wanted to hear about what is your feelings
Let's
about.
start off talking about Deb when we're talking about Dexter.
Look, you need to get the supporting cast there, because, like, honestly,
Yeah,
a lot of the show is not. If they weren't there, Dexter would be a different show, right? Because it's because he's trying to blend in that these people are so important. But Deb is arguably the most important character.
She's huge.
And I wanted to know, what did you think of her character in the show overall?
I fucking love Deb. Not only, I have this specific note, Jennifer Carpenter, who plays Deb, world-class acting. Absolutely phenomenal. I have no idea if Deb is very similar to her real-life personality, which is why she was able to channel her so well, or if she's just that good at acting. I don't know, but Jennifer Carpenter is amazing, and there are multiple times throughout these seasons where Lauren and I are just kind of like look at each other thinking like, wow, she is so good at acting. She has... her character suffers a lot, and she has so many, I don't know, like problematic traits, but then sympathetic traits, and she portrays all of them so perfectly. Like, there's one point in season 4 recently where she basically is having a full-blown panic attack, and it is so believable that, like, I noticed my eyes were kind of welling up and my heart rate was increasing watching her, and I was feeling tense and anxious, and I'm like, wait, I'm watching an actor have fake a panic attack. This isn't real. Holy shit. Like, it was so good and convincing that it really, I don't know, cemented that she is for sure the single best actress on the show. But I also just love her character. She's very consistent.
Wow. Interesting.
Yep.
My memory of her is performance-wise, I would be 100%. I agree with you. She conveys sorrow and grieving in a very powerful and believable way.
And insecurities. She has so much
I
insecurity.
do love how kind of gross and vulgar she is in a way that's like
Love it.
unpleasant. I don't like how she talks to people. It is not someone that like you would get to like someone like that. You don't instantly like someone like that. Okay,
I have a little bit
I
of
should speak for
experience with that.
I should say speaking from personal experience, this, in my opinion, that's someone I could learn to like understand. They're just very abrasive. And I remember the first time watching it, I hated Deb. Could not stand her when she was on screen.
Wow, I loved her like right away.
And on the rewatch, I still loathe her being on screen. And partially it is the second half of Dexter that they completely torpedo her specifically into the ground. That I think why some of my overarching feelings are more intense on the negative end, because there's so much Deb shit that is like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, she does some patently absurd and dumb shit. Also wants to fuck her brother. I mean, that's also...
Yeah, I know, it turns incestual later. So after season 4, I was like, I really don't know if I want to watch more of the show. So what I did instead was just kind of read character bios to read like basically just what happens to Dexter, what happens to Deb, what happens to LaGuerta, what happens to all these characters. So I just spent, 20 minutes reading kind of essays on, basically just synopses of each season, what the characters go through to complete the picture in my head without having to spend, 100 more hours watching this show that I might not actually enjoy. And yeah, reading some of the stuff, I was like, man, this show sounds really fucking stupid. Glad I'm not going to watch anymore. But yes. I am sad because the show, it's one of those perfect shows that strikes a great balance of being like intense and exciting, but also it's like funny and light, but it's also kind of a comfy show. It's really nice to just kind of sit down at towards the end of the day when you're winding down to go to bed and you throw this show on where you're like having fun watching it, but it's not too much for you that you're like, jacked up afterwards and can't go to sleep. Like, I don't know. I really, really liked watching this show every night, just watching 2 or 3 episodes.
I think they have I think the narration Michael C. Hall does in the show in particular is kind of that part of the secret sauce. I think that really, I don't know why I felt it very effective. Not in the like necessarily like it is needed for the show to make sense, but there's something about the way that you are living that entire experience so cemented through someone's personal experience that helps you really connect with the heinous shit and the dumb stuff. And like, I don't know, I find Dexter a very interesting and fun character to follow. Even if he does some dumb shit, I find him doing dumb stuff. And I think season 1 to me, I almost wish if this was made now, there was never this Showtime in 2007. They would do season 1 and be done. It was a limited run show, and that ending like fantasy he has, that's how the show ends. Of like, I think that's so perfect, and I kind of hate they kept going after it.
Yeah, going and going.
But to circle back to Deb, I did want to finish my thought on her. Is that after my current feelings about what I think about her is that in the first few seasons I do really love her, and I agree with what you're saying, but the latter half is kind of what you remember her for, and it does really suck.
Yeah, from what I was reading, I was like, man, it sounds very sad what they did to her character. It's just so fun, and I really liked her.
It's just crazy that like no one comes out of this unscathed somehow. I don't know. It's crazy.
So, okay, let's circle back then, since this episode is going to be very tangential because we're talking about 4 seasons, which might be weird, but you'll understand probably by the end of the podcast why season 4 ending on that one why season 4 is the most contentious and why probably a lot of people stopped watching the show. It also is a really good just sort of section of an example of a show that just kind of gets bad over time, where it starts really high season 1 and just dips down slowly over time, and by season 4 you're kind of exhausted and you don't really want to watch it anymore. They start changing characters. They start doing things that are out of character. They stop paying attention to the details. It just gets really sloppy, and I'll talk about that when we get there. But for season 1, where it was amazing, really fun. Season 1 synopsis is there's another serial killer on the loose they're trying to catch. His name is the Ice Truck Killer, because they figure out that he kills prostitutes, drains them entirely of their blood, and he refrigerates and keeps these corpses in an ice truck. And he drives to locations and deposits these cut up bloodless corpses for the police to find. And he's, one of those serial killers like Zodiac or BTK, where they sort of tease the police force and the detectives, where I'm smarter than you, I'm better than you, I'm leaving you only the things that you want to see. And so he's kind of creating this puzzle for the detectives to solve. And he is dubbed the Ice Truck Killer because of his methods. What do we have to say about season 1?
What I want to say is I love the mystery of season 1 is done so well because of how many the red herrings feel at certain points in the story that you could believe that this could be the identity, but it may not be the end of the chase, right? And so I remember when the one guy's just trying to take credit just to get famous. For a little bit, the first time I watched it, I thought that might be it, or he might be related or important, but it just ends up being some nobody.
I forgot about that.
I think that whole sequence is done really well. That was
I love
awesome.
that actor too, Sam Whit.
Oh, is that Sam Whitaker?
Something, yeah. I want to say Sam Witwicky, but that's
it's so close to that. But I know the exact guy.
Name?
He's in a couple of video games. Ironically, that's what I know him more from than anything else. Do you remember The Force Awakens or Days Gone on the PlayStation?
Yeah. No, The Force Awakens is where I recognize him from.
Okay,
he's also in the Mist.
Okay. Oh, in The Mist. Yeah, that's the movie I need to commit because he's a soldier in The Mist. Great.
Sam Witwer.
Sorry.
Yeah,
Sam.
He's great. He's got a good face.
Yeah.
He's got a really good face.
But I think that's a cool moment because it seems like it's within the realm of possibility, and getting to hear Dexter almost be disappointed as time goes on is man, because the big twist I guess early on is the taunting specifically to Dexter from the serial killer.
Yes.
The serial killer knows who Dexter is, and that he's a serial killer. So it's about it's this person is personally connected to him, so he knows at the end of the day it's a guy playing a game with Dexter, and the cops are just little on the side. They don't even matter, and so there's a very personal connection.
That's more what it is. The Ice Truck Killer is leaving enough of a crime scene that the detectives have to investigate, but he actually wants to play this secret little game with Dexter, and he specifically breaks into Dexter's house and leaves him little clues. Dexter's apartment, I should say. Leaves him little clues for Dexter to find out. So there's sort of two games being played, and Dexter knows. Yeah, and Dexter has to play both of them because he is playing the secret game with the Ice Truck Killer, but he's also part of the police force as a blood spatter analyst, which I forgot to mention earlier. That's his job. He's his sister Deb and himself both work with the Miami Metro Police, and he is a blood spatter analyst, and Deb is a cop, and she ends up working her way up to detective. So Dexter then has to play both sides of the field here, and he has to, he's. Anyways, I whatever. I've said enough about that.
Yeah, and I was gonna touch all that stuff up when we talked about Dexter proper, but I just trying to think of that. That there's a red herring in that season where he thinks it's this guy, but as he gets more information, we know that it can't be that guy because it's just so random and stuff, and I don't know. That was a fun red herring halfway through, and a lot of times it's when a show becomes a little formulaic, that oh, this big reveal of the villain can't be true because we're on episode 3 of a 12-episode season. But
yeah,
in this
or it
show,
makes you think, does he escape? Is he going to be involved from prison somehow? What is happening with this? So it's possible that could have been
exactly
him early.
And it's one of the few times that I think the show gives you enough time to be one step ahead and be I don't think this is it. like because it's slowly revealed over time that this dude is a nobody and stuff like that. But
Yeah, it's what happens in real life where a serial killer will still remain at large and somebody wants to take credit for the serial killer's work. So that's what happens is, about halfway through the season, they find this guy who seems to fit the profile of the ice truck killer. They arrest him. Dexter, looking through his this guy's trailer, actually, is kind of disappointed because he's like sloppy and gross. And Dexter has this gut feeling that like, this can't be the guy, right? Like there's no way he lives in squalor and it's nasty. There's no way he's this precise surgical guy who's draining his victims' blood and cutting them into perfect little segments. And, it was very surgical, the way the ice truck killer kills people. And this guy, the way he lives is very not surgical and neat. And so, yeah, this red herring eventually gets revealed that it's this huge buildup. This guy gets arrested. He's in an interview, not an interview chamber. Holy shit.
An interrogation room?
Interrogation room.
Investigation chamber.
That's how the Brits say it. The interview chamber. No, he's in the investigation room.
Pretty sure that was the Harry Potter sequel. I don't
the Harry Potter in the investigation room. So Dexter eventually meets this guy and he's like very anxious about it, and he sits in the room and he sees this new red herring character come in and sit down, and they're looking at each other, and Dexter's like, holy shit, I'm meeting. It's basically Dexter has become a fanboy because this guy's so good at killing people. And then the guy sits down and the first thing he says is, who the fuck are you? And it immediately becomes clear, okay, this is a faker. He doesn't even know Dexter. The real serial killer has been playing the secret game with Dexter, so we as the audience know, and Dexter knows that the serial killer knows who he is. So he wouldn't immediately be confused and asking. So the red herring is then squashed. At this point, then, we learn who the real serial killer is. It's a doctor who you've seen just a couple times sprinkled into the earlier episodes because, the police are getting shot at or injured or whatever. One of them ends up in the hospital, and he is the doctor taking care of this guy.
Yeah, I love about it, so he works at a prosthetics lab specifically because that's all very relevant, and I like that how smoothly they integrate this guy where every time he's on screen, you don't think that he's going to be a repeating character.
Nothing of it. Yeah.
And he fits in everywhere a little bit, and the little romance plot kind of makes sense, and you're like, all right, cool, this is fun.
You know what? Yeah, I don't want to spoil too much. We'll leave some things.
Okay.
But yeah, this character, he's a doctor, and he ends up dating Deb. But he starts dating Deb before you know he's the motherfucking ice truck killer. And when it's revealed, it's like, holy shit, Deb is dating the ice truck killer. It's insane. And the ice truck killer is obviously only dating Deb to get closer to Dexter. So, fuck, I thought I had a point to talk about here.
Typical white man interrupting me. The thing is, have a point.
What? It sounded like you were done. Fuck off. The thing is, I do want to get through all the seasons. I think season 2 and 3 will be a little bit quicker, and I do have notes that I want to specifically hit. Especially for season 4. I wanted to get more granular with season 4 and why it felt so bad.
I do want to talk about season 1 because to me, that season is what Dexter is. So Dexter's based off of books, as you know.
Yeah.
Dearly Departed. All the book titles are alliterations, but
yes, with D's.
So in the books, it is much more like overtly that Dexter is like possessed by an evil spirit called his dark passenger. He calls it in the show, but they don't really. They imply that it's more like this non-verbal force that urges him to murder. Where in the book, it is a deliberate character that speaks to him and eggs him on to do this shit. It is a literal at some point you find out his brother is a bad guy too, that he has a brother, and is visited, envisions a ghost of him speaks to Dexter in one of these episodes in the later season. That relationship is much more of what the dark passenger is in the books. So
interesting.
Yeah.
That sounds cool. Because the thing is, in the show, Dexter's father, Harry, who taught him the code of Harry, is deceased. But Harry still appears very, very often and has full conversations with Dexter in his own head. And the way that the sequences are filmed is usually Harry just kind of appears, anywhere that Dexter is, but the lighting gets a little bit dreamlike and hazy, and you can tell that it's kind of taking place in Dexter's mind versus obviously him literally hallucinating Harry is there. It's more in his own head. But that's how they keep his dad as a character in the show, is that he will appear and have conversations with Dexter and try to continue to steer him the right way, even though when you think about it, it's just Dexter talking to himself. These are his own thoughts, but Harry, his dad, is such a full and complete character, you don't even really think about that. It does really seem like a ghost of someone else is talking to him, but yeah, it's all in his head.
Yeah,
but
so...
My long-winded point is it sounds like it's inverted, right? They chose to keep Harry as this more positive, influential character to Dexter appear and talk to him versus this demonic dark passenger that's trying to pull him down and get him to submit to his urges.
Yeah, because I like the way the show frames him as like a serial killer, channeling that darkness for good, but the books frame it as an evil person an evil spirit possessing a person to commit evil acts that he has to do. It's a much darker book. It's a much more morally gray. Like, Dexter's not a nice guy. He's not murdering innocent people, but he's just not people like Dexter except for Dokes, right? Like the one guy who can smell that his shit stinks because he's so weird. But Dexter has much more relationships with Dokes than with LaGuerta, who loves Dexter. So
which is funny because, by the way, that lasts for all of 3 episodes, and you don't really think about it. She is overtly sexual to Dexter and touches his leg and very clearly.
Ding dong.
Yeah, she clearly wants some ding dong, and it just sort of fizzles and disappears, and you forget that was even a thing, which I wish they did something else with that.
Yeah, there's something interesting there. I don't know what it was, but they seemed just as uncertain about it, and they couldn't commit.
Yeah,
which is
that's
fine.
probably they just kind of.
Look where they got kind of the raw end of the deal. I do like that they soften her up later too, because LaGuerta was the one character I really had a hard time in season 1. Is the only low point for me. Is
wow, it sounds like you just hate women.
I do kind of.
Yeah,
so that adds up. I know I'm getting too specifics of season 1 a lot, but I did. It was because it's the highest. The show never gets better than this. These are all the moments that it's just so interwoven so smoothly. I think the characters all behave in ways that make sense to the character. Sometimes it's illogically, but the character, I could see why they would do that, or why they're being such assholes. Why are you being so dramatic? I get it. I love how wounded not Deb, what's Rita, his girlfriend, is in that season.
She's so vulnerable.
Is the ex-husband is all in that first season, right?
Yes.
I loved all those story bits there where it was
me too.
Because he never, it's just trying to outmaneuver this ex-con is just so good. And also that guy plays Satan in Supernatural. So it's just, I just thought it was very funny. That guy's a really good character actor. He's awesome in everything he's in. I can't think of his name, but I recognize him a lot.
So Rita is Dexter's girlfriend that he picks up specifically as a cover so that he looks more normal, but he has no interest in an actual relationship. And Rita has an ex-husband named Paul, who was a literal crack addict, physically, emotionally abusive piece of shit, but he ended up having 2 kids with Rita.
And he rapes her. That's a big point.
Yeah, okay. That's the catalyst to make them break up, and she finally.
But that's why she acts so distant and cold, is because she was
getting there.
Okay, I just want. All right,
I'm crafting these characters. Oh fuck! I just need my table. I'm completing the picture of the characters as we bring them up, so people actually know, have an idea of what we're talking about. Yeah, Rita is sexually abused and physically abused by her ex-husband Paul, who is a crackhead and ends up in prison because of what he did. So then Rita has 2 kids with him, meets Dexter, but because she's so abused, she's having a hard time connecting to Dexter, which Dexter makes multiple inner monologue narrations about, saying yep, this is a perfect situation for me because now I don't have to engage with her or fake any more than I am. She's not interested in a physical relationship. They kind of kiss a little bit and they try to have sex a couple times, but then she gets these PTSD flashbacks and doesn't want to do anything. So Dexter's all right, cool. But But that's how it all starts, and eventually Dexter grows more fond of her, and she overcomes her trauma, and eventually they end up with a quite a real relationship. And he really cares for her, and that's part of his character development. Is basically over the course of these 4 seasons that I watched, and presumably throughout the rest of the show, is Dexter is becoming more human. And that's sort of a struggle that he's having to deal with. Instead of just being this emotionless guy who lives by a code that his father taught him, he's actually starting to care for people and have second thoughts about things where he used to not care at all. And, it's the question of, like, can a serial killer be human? Can a serial killer really feel things in the same capacity that a normal person does? And that's sort of a lot of the dilemma that gets brought up in the later seasons.
Yeah, I find that I feel like they kind of skip a step somewhere. They're like, all of a sudden, I don't know, it felt like all of a sudden they were like okay with each other. I don't know, maybe you feel different, but like I felt the relationship.
Okay? What do you mean okay? Him and Rita?
Yeah. Like the physical connection, like it just and more so with Dexter, I'm more confused with than Rita. Is like he kind of just all of a sudden starts to care, but I don't know if I understood what happens. Like it doesn't feel like there's like a moment.
I will say, because you mentioned that you haven't watched the
Right.
show in a lot longer, and I, literally just in the past month have watched season 1 through 4. It is a really, really good natural progression, his and Rita's relationship. If I can't remember the specifics, all I could say really is that you just trust that I felt as a fairly critical guy that it was a very believable arc between them. I mean, it literally takes them almost the entire first season to have a physical connection, and they had been boyfriend-girlfriend since episode 1. You knew who Rita was since episode 1. So, like, it takes a long time for them to really start to get connected. And it's just the little bits of Rita showing compassion and showing that she cares for Dexter, and Dexter being like, oh, I guess people care for me, people like me, okay, interesting. And he has to kind of process, because he's on the receiving end of a woman who wants to love him and care for him, and the only reason she can't is because of her own personal problems. Nothing wrong with Dexter. And so he's realizing that whether maybe it's his mask, his acting that's very good and he's making people believe it, or that people actually care about him, either way, he's sort of, that's what's kind of, I don't know how to explain what I'm saying, but that's what makes him realize that, like, he might have more human qualities than he thinks, or maybe I do care about people caring about me. Like, I'm doing all this to try to fit in, but it does feel good to have somebody want me and care for me, and I lie to them and they figure it out, but then they forgive me, and I'm not some, I'm not just dismissed. Which Dexter, it's a very common theme. He's pretty afraid of abandonment because of when he was young, his mother got, let's just say his mom got killed in front of him. And so he has this sort of internal innate fear of abandonment. And I don't know where I was going with that, but.
Okay, so maybe it is
the
just
arc works. It works.
Yeah, I think of that's probably true. That was my only beef with them. I kind of liked how much more disconnected Dexter was in season 1, but maybe that was more my edgy younger self wanting him to be a more, like, cool character. I don't know. I feel like I'm remembering it through a much more, like, immature lens, if I'm being honest.
Okay. I would, I think we sort of left our perspectives like this on purpose, where you have your thoughts about the show, but you haven't seen it in a few years, and I am coming back to it and have fresh thoughts on it. We kind of left this dynamic on purpose, but I think if you revisited season 1, you would probably like it a lot more and be even more impressed, which is why when you said season 4 is the second best season, I was kind of shocked, because there was a lot of stuff in season 4 that I really didn't like, and I was like, I think Taylor might be misremembering some things. Because even like you just said, in your head, it's just a switch gets flipped for Dexter that suddenly he likes Rita, but it's totally not like that through the development of season 1. So, yeah, I would encourage you almost, I don't know, maybe even rewatch season 1 through 4, but
I just want to let you know, when I told you about season 4 being the second best, I put it lower than most people do. On average, it's number 1 or 2.
Wow.
Like I just as a personal, just to be clear that like season 4 is a very well liked season. It's shown as kind of like this is the beginning, is the last good season, and had some higher highs, and it's specifically the Trinity Killer stuff. But
that's crazy how much people like that. I did not, dude. I was pretty frustrated at a lot in season 4. So. You know what? Let's use this opportunity to move forward. So
I was just going to agree. Yeah.
Yeah. Season 1 is just, it's really great. It's a compelling drama. It's fun to watch this kind of robot sociopath serial killer kind of learn how to be human. It's cool to watch him murder these, piece of shit people. All the characters are great. We haven't talked about his secondary cast, like his Miami Metro PD people. Which we'll get to more of because they become more prominent in the later seasons. Season 2 is basically... Okay, no, this is one more thing I wanted to comment on for season 1, why it set the stage for me and what disappointed me so much in the later seasons. Was they did this amazing thing, and I wish I remembered specifics, but all I can say is this general tone of what I felt, was that honesty was what created drama in the show. Because Dexter isn't super good at interacting with people. He doesn't know, in my head, because he has such an unbelievably enormous lie that he has to always hide, which is the fact that he's a fucking serial killer. He's honest about almost everything else in his entire life. Because he has an entire secondary secret life that he's hiding. It just feels like it would be too much for him to also lie about everything else. So Dexter is brutally honest about a lot of things, and it does also play into the fact that he's not good with, he needs that directness to understand people, understand conversations, to keep up with things. So there's many moments in season 1 where he's asked a question, and in my, in the cynicism in my head, I'm like, oh, okay, here he goes. He's going to lie about something for no fucking reason and create drama. No, he tells the truth. And that creates the drama. And I was like, that's so fucking cool. He just admits to something, but the thing he admits to is like, it sucks and it's shitty and it creates drama with Rita. Rita gets pissed off for him for it, but it's like, it's very real and it was really cool. It subverted my expectations, how much everyone hates that phrase, but it really did. And that is something that gets lost and reversed in the later seasons. He starts to fucking lie for no goddamn reason. And that is when I'm like, fuck you, writers of the show. You nailed this. You already had the formula. And now you're just being lazy and making him lie to create drama when no normal fucking human being would lie.
Okay, I'm going to pause you because I love
maybe
this.
Maybe not normal, whatever.
Because I want to ask specific questions. So when you say he starts lying for no reason, you're talking about things he doesn't have to lie about? Or are you saying that in the
basically.
Okay, because like you're saying, for example, he lies about seeing this other family, right? This group of this guy, right? Like, what lies does he start to do in season 4, for example, that is so stupid? Do you have an example of something that he does?
Yeah, specifically, it's about him keeping his apartment.
Oh, he has. I forgot he gets that apartment for some reason.
No, he doesn't. He doesn't get one. He has one. He keeps his apartment even because he marries Rita over the course of, season 1 through 4, whatever. He gets married to Rita at some point and they move in together, but he secretly keeps his apartment on the side because his apartment is where he keeps his kill tools in this secret little chest, and he keeps his blood slides, which is like his signature. He always cuts his victim's cheek, takes a droplet of their blood and puts it on a slide, and he collects those slides. He keeps his blood slides in his other apartment. He keeps his kill tools in his other apartment. And also because, he's a serial killer and he does all this research on his victims, he needs his sanctuary. He refers to his sanctuary a lot. And, he needs a secondary special space to, like, let out this dark passenger, basically. It's essentially his dark passenger's home, if you want to look at it like that.
Okay, that's good.
But the way he lies about it is unnecessary, and then when he finally tells the truth about it, he's still kind of lying about it. But it's such a stupid fucking mundane truth that Rita immediately is like, yeah, okay, that's fine. Why didn't you tell me that before? Oh, I didn't want to lose you. It's like, shut the fuck up. No, that's not how your character is. And I've argued with myself in my head. It's like, well, maybe now he does care so much about Rita and the kids that he does feel the need to lie, because there's stakes now. He doesn't want to lose people, so he is lying. Whereas in season 1, he's kind of indifferent to the human connection, so he'll lie to somebody, and if they leave him, whatever, fuck it, who cares? So like, I know what the argument is, I just don't agree with it, and I don't like it, and it felt way too cliche and typical CBS procedural drama kind of thing.
Okay,
so that's my spiel about honesty versus lying, and how
I
it was
like
much more
that. That's
compelling
a
in season
really
1.
cool point, and something that I think a lot of people would miss, because I think when you read the plot of Dexter season 4, it's a very interesting and cool woven plot, and I think it's an interesting thing to see, kind of like watching your hero or have to have hope and have it dashed away, and when you find out how horrible a person that guy is, and how, it turns out that he doesn't have his life together. I think those are all like cool themes and stuff. But I think that's an interesting point. You say, like, if it feels like Dexter's starting to be a different character, but in a bad way.
Yeah, or a cheap way. Yeah, he becomes a worse character in a cheap way. So I think season 2 and 3, well, 3 we'll talk about. 2 is fairly skippable to me. It kind of
Which one?
Blended together. Season 2. This is the one where so at the end of season 1, Rita basically Dexter ends up having to lie and tell Rita that he's a drug addict, because it would explain why he disappears all the time, or he like calls her and says, "Oh, I can't make it home," and he goes out at nights and whatever. And Rita's just kind of like prodding him and trying to figure out what's going on with him, and she incorrectly assumes that he's a drug addict, and he's like, "Oh, wait a second, this is actually a pretty good out. Yep, I'm a drug addict, you got me." So now in season 2, he ends up going to the 12-step program just to, he's just faking it. He's just trying to get through it so that Rita will trust him again. And he meets this woman, Lila, who is also a drug addict. She's a British girl, and I don't know, like season 2 is almost boring to me, I think, and it went on too much.
I have a lot of problems with season 2. I don't even think that I think there are 3 good seasons in seasons 1 through 4. And we disagree on which 3 those are.
Okay.
I hate season 2 because they kill off the most interesting foil to Dexter. I love Dokes. Dokes fucking rules.
Oh, yeah.
And they ruin the plot of, holy shit, they're on to me way too fast. Season 2, they're already going to use the thing of, I'm running from the institution I work for. That's way too early in the show. Like, that should have been the exit. I don't know. I have like a moral disagreement of like, it's too early for the stakes to be raised that high. Because how do you get that excited again for him to get caught? Other than the entire state is after him. Like, nope. I don't know. And I know that like she's probably a good metaphor for drug addiction. Like that's what she's supposed to represent. But I just didn't love the character. It didn't work for me. Did not like season 2.
No, yeah. Lila she becomes very possessive and controlling of Dexter. They meet at the 12-step program. She starts off as a sponsor, but there's obviously there's a sexual tension there, and Lila, quote unquote, sees through Dexter's mask. She kind of can tell who he really is, even though she doesn't actually know he's a serial killer, but she recognizes him as having an addiction and having dark urges that he succumbs to, and the parallels between somebody trying to maintain sobriety, say from any addiction, alcohol, heroin, whatever it is. In the show, Dexter's pretending he's a heroin addict. The way he can talk about his dark passenger, but how it is perfectly camouflaged by an addiction to heroin, it was fun. It was interesting, where he, for the first time in Dexter's life, he was able to essentially openly talk about his serial killing addiction, but not have to directly talk about it. So it was cool that he got to talk to Lila like that, and that's why Lila could see through his mask, because he was admitting his addiction to this horrible dark urge, but it was to killing someone rather than, injecting heroin. So that was fun. But then she becomes really controlling and possessive and starts like fucking with his life, and so he ends up having to fucking kill her, of course, by the end of the season.
So
and she does just some ridiculous shit, man, and
my problem is that it is such a clear metaphor as character rather than a character. It is just drug addiction into relapse. The high is so high and so good early, but it causes such chaos in your life, and it makes you mean, and it felt like that's all it was. She was just supposed to represent drug addiction and how this is like him.
That's a good point. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, and like that's more or less what it is. And I think she easily like tricks dope. Like she was like, it feels like a Deus Ex Machina almost in a way. Like, I've come down to take all of the heat off you and the blame for the murders you did up to this point. Represent drug addiction, disappear into the ether, hands clean, nice bow on it. It's just like, I don't know. It's all a little too neat. It's a little too clean and nice. And I didn't buy it. It's weird because of how much I loved season 1 too. It's like, I view Dexter season 1 as like one of my favorite shows I've ever watched.
Yeah.
So like to go to season 2, and I remember having a conversation with Ryan, our brother, about it and how much he thought season 2 was just strictly better. It's like, man, I do not get it.
Yeah.
Most people I knew growing up loved it. I couldn't.
That's a good point that Lila wasn't a nuanced character. I'm realizing now. She, like you're saying, she was so overt about what she was that, like you're saying, she was just drug addiction manifested into a person, and it was kind of boring. And I think that's why I mentioned earlier it was boring, because she just did kind of the same stuff over and over, and he kept having to kind of fix and manage this psycho drug addict girl trying to like possess him and control him. It just got boring. So season 2, basically the big thing is that Dokes ends up dying. I have zero recollection of how Dokes died. In my head, Dokes died at the end of season 1, and he died in the shipping container that Dexter was in. Because I remember that scene in season 1 where Dokes says, "Surprise, motherfucker!" That's
such a
sound bite.
God, it's so good, dude.
Yeah.
Best line read of all time.
Yeah, that sound bite and that line specifically have just like lived on the internet from then forward. I mean, people still say "surprise, motherfucker" in like Reddit threads and shit. So yeah, when he said that, in my head, they end up having a fight, and he has to drug Dokes and kill him in the shipping container that he was found in. Because they're in the shipyard, basically. Whatever, who cares? I'm not going to explain this shit.
You don't need to give the context. They're just at that place.
I thought that's where Dokes died, and it doesn't. They just kind of have a little bit of a scrap, and then they get caught, and then they have to go their separate ways. And then season 2, Dokes is held as a prisoner, basically, by Dexter for the entire season. And then Dokes ends up dying in the end because Lila gets involved and feels so bad for Dexter. And, oh, wow, he's had this huge secret. He can't tell anyone. He must feel so alone, which is like kind of an interesting thought. It's like, yeah, he must feel lonely. And, not in the same lonely that any of us feel, but that, like, yeah, he's a serial killer. And any other serial killer he gets to connect to are bad serial killers because he lives by the code of Harry and none of the other ones do. So even as a serial killer, he's alone. And that's an interesting thought. And of course, it's basically just thrown away in the last episode of the show before both Dokes and Lila die, where it's like that could have been an avenue to explore, where maybe I'm being too harsh. Maybe they're exploring it constantly and I'm not paying enough attention, his loneliness and his isolation, but he's never portrayed vulnerable in that way to me.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's a classic. I think a show might get credit for posing a question and then feeling like you feel smart for asking the question, but then not caring about the answer. I feel like a lot of and this, like, I feel like this expands beyond just like writing and television. There's just a lot of that kind of like, aren't I smart for noticing, rather than like having an insightful answer, which I think is what the point of this type of art is supposed to do, is explore the answers to the questions that you pose. So like, or at least if you're not going to answer, at least provide like ways for us to answer that question for ourselves. I think the show doesn't get to do that. Like I said with drug addiction, it just shows like, isn't drug addiction bad? That's it. That's all. Like, you know, I don't know what to do with that information. Like, so.
But the thing is, like, Dexter's Dark Passenger is already a metaphor for drug addiction. So
yeah,
Lila
or like
was just
a
completely
vice or
redundant.
Impulse,
yeah, and that's why it was so annoying, because there was no nuance to what they were doing. It was super ham-fisted, and yeah, like, they didn't provide any new insight. They didn't make you think more about it, because, like I just said, Dexter already has to deal with this. So we have, as an audience, been dealing with this for 2 seasons. So Lila getting pulled into this mix does nothing.
Yeah.
It was just annoying. So anyways, we are on minute 50. So we have about 30 more minutes, unless we want this one to go a bit longer, which of course we
Season 3 I like a lot more than most people. I love Season 3 because I think Jimmy Spitz gives an incredible performance. I think
Was that who played Miguel?
Yes. Jimmy
Okay.
Spitz, I think is his name.
That's like such an American sounding name for a guy.
I might be confusing his name with someone else. Anyway, I'm saying his name wrong. You can look it up while I'm talking about why Season 3 is great and why everyone who just likes it.
Jimmy Smits. What the hell?
Okay, good. I was right, or close to it. But I think the only, a lot of people like to point out that like the creepy skinning guy, like him being just some random guy, is unfulfilling. I don't know. I get it. I don't know that I am upset by it. They kind of set it up to be, this is just some random, like, a lot of the serial killers they catch aren't going to be like, it was my cousin, you know? And like, they
have to be.
They have to just be
random
bad guys out there. And I think that season, the really, I think it's just the slow transition from a good guy to a bad guy. And I think it's another, like, one of those moments that like is really powerful as a character moment for Dexter, about setting up like a really dark tragedy where, like, you know, the first person he lets in romantically, like, you know, he has that horrible love affair that causes emotional problems, and he lets in a friend who ends up betraying him, and he ends up killing. And season 3 is great. I give that's like one of my favorite seasons of the show.
Yeah, season 3 was, as a general synopsis, the assistant district attorney, his name is Miguel, ends up befriending Dexter, and basically Dexter ends up letting him in and actually teaching him how to kill, and they end up killing people together because, yeah, again, I'm not going to explain it, we don't have the time, but basically Miguel kind of like starts to figure out what Dexter is, and he's like, I know what you do, and I follow you, I'm with you, let's
get these guys I can't put behind bars off the streets.
Because, exactly. He's a district attorney, so he's watched these horrible, heinous people escape justice from loopholes and bullshit jurisdictions, or not jurisdiction,
legislation,
the judicial system. So yeah, he actually really likes and respects Dexter for what he does, which I thought was cool. Yeah, like, it's an interesting character that they put here. What I didn't believe is that he wanted to end up killing with Dexter, which is what happens in season 3. And especially on top of the fact that there was a big reveal at the end of the season. Miguel has a brother, whatever, yada, yada, yada. Dexter ends up... How do I word this in a way that, like, I don't have to explain the context of this?
Don't explain the context. Explain it to me.
I'll just talk to you about it. Miguel's brother ends up getting arrested, and Dexter is kind of like taunting him in another interrogation room, and he says something like, you know, Miguel told me that your father was abusive, and Miguel pushed him down the stairs and killed him, and that he enjoyed it. And then Miguel's brother looks at Dexter and is like, he told you that? And Dexter's like, yep, he tells me things. And then Miguel's brother is like, dude, I pushed our dad down the stairs and killed him, and he took credit for it. And suddenly Dexter is like, oh, fuck, and realizes he's basically been lied to from the start of his and Miguel's relationship, which is a recurring theme throughout the season. Is Dexter's realizing he's letting in this guy who he thinks is his friend and is similar to him, but he ends up kind of just getting played, and he's continually getting lied to by Miguel, and he has to kind of figure that out and deal with that. So even in the end, after he kills Miguel and arrests his brother for whatever and talks to his brother, he still finds out, even after his fucking death, he's being lied to and tricked by Miguel. That part frustrated me because it means that Miguel actually didn't kill anybody in his life. He didn't have this impulse. He shouldn't have had this impulse because he didn't actually kill anyone.
I just think he's just a shitty dude who is not embarrassed. Like, he wants power because he ends up wanting to basically kill enemies of his, not like bad people. I think that's the breaking point for Dexter too. Besides him killing people independently from him, but he just starts killing, like, my understanding is, like, political opponents too.
Yeah, he ends up killing a political opponent. Yeah, just to, like, further.
And I think what the problem is, they basically reveal, and he was evil the whole time. I don't think is as satisfying as.
That's what pissed me off. I'm like, what?
I think I like the idea that, like, maybe it, like, he tried it and just, like, it was like just a drug once again, implying, and then he just, like, ODs on it, right? I like that angle more than he was playing you and has always played you and everybody you've ever known ever. Because then it's just like, okay, he's comically evil, just kill him. There's no gray anymore. And
I even have. Sorry, because we need to get to season 4, and I imagine season 4 is going to be the longest talking point, so I don't think we can stay on these topics too long. So I'm just going to interrupt you, and feel free to interrupt me. But I also just had a hard time believing that Miguel would even kill somebody, especially learning that he didn't actually kill his own father.
Yeah, after that's fair.
Yeah, like, okay, I get it. You were beaten and abused by your alcoholic father, and you watched your family get abused by this guy, but he grew up to be a district attorney, right? Like, he ended up fighting the system in a way that would fulfill that kind of character arc, right? Where, like, you're beaten down and abused and you fight your father back to become a justice-seeking man. And then I guess they're like, well, he watched people escape justice, so that's not satisfying to him. So now he's a murderer.
So
I don't know.
My other interpretation of that, Kyle, is that instead he's using that as an excuse to justify his crimes, when in reality he's just as bloodthirsty as anyone else, but he's pretending that he's better than that. Like, that's another way to read that exact same thing, which is, I think, the way I internalized it and why I end up liking it, because that's how I read it.
Yeah, but he's like a 50-year-old dude who never murdered anyone in his life, didn't even hurt an animal. He couldn't kill no, that was actually the Trinity Killer, couldn't kill a deer. But yeah, like, I don't know. I just didn't buy that he had a killer in him. I would have liked it if he was a sidekick. I would have really liked that if they made him more of a power hungry sidekick. Could have been.
I feel like this could have been a series long ups and down. Like, they could have dragged this on and not be like a flavor of the season. I don't like that every season is just a whole new killer. Like, I feel like some of these people, like, this dynamic could be very interesting if you treated it like a long running dynamic and not just a. Here's our guest.
Though.
All right, well, that's all I have for season 3. I think it's pretty good. You think it's pretty good?
It was carried by that guy's acting too. He was so fucking good, and it was
he's
really
so much
fun
charisma, dude.
Yeah, so fucking charismatic, and it was just fun. But there was a lot of bits in between in season 3 that continued the downward trend for me of like, writing's kind of lazy, writing's kind of sloppy.
It definitely even I noticed in season 3 is when you start to see some of the just like shortcuts, or you're like, this seems like they wrote the character responded this way only if they want to cause drama. Like, why would you say it that way? What? Okay,
and
that's what's happened.
I'll circle back briefly to season 1. You're talking about shortcuts. In season 1, there was an absurd attention to detail, which of course I loved, because the season is introducing you to these characters. They're introducing you to their careers. They're introducing you to all of these things, and they want to point. They really wanted to hammer home how precise and good Dexter is at what he does, both as a blood spatter analyst and as a serial killer. Like, he's really good and smart. And they really hammered this stuff home with the details, and all of that kind of stuff is lost for these A, B, C, D plot lines that they have to follow throughout all these seasons, because all these other characters start to become more important. So now we're following, 5, 6 different threads, and the attention to detail gets lost, and so they start taking shortcuts, which really comes to a head, I think, for me in season 4, where there's a guy called the Trinity Killer, and it's played by John Lithgow, who's also really fun to watch, and he's pretty disturbing. I hated him in this.
Yeah,
which is
dude,
a testament to his acting.
So good.
And he kills people in threes. He wow, I can't even remember he kills a young, beautiful woman in her bathtub by cutting her ephemeral artery in her leg. Then he makes a mother jump to her death off of a tall whatever. Then he bludgeons an older man to death with a hammer or a blunt object. So he kills in these 3 cycles, and one of the detectives is keen on it, and he kind of figures out, like, other people are overlooking these, but this one detective is smart, and he's like, this trinity of kills is taking place all over the country, so no one's connecting the dots. But he's like, there's this sequence of 3 kills that happens, and it's been happening for 30 fucking years all over the country, and no one's connecting it because it's happening too far away from each other, and none of the departments are connected. And the FBI won't take on the case because they don't believe it. So this detective is figuring out what's happening, and now it turns out Trinity is in Miami, and he's starting a cycle again. And so that's this season, is them trying to find this Trinity Killer and figure out what's going on. So, and again, this is where this season started retreading a lot of ground, which was frustrating for me. Specifically, the related to or dating serial killers and having secret something or other serial killers. Season 1, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Season 4, there's multiple of this, where it's like Quinn, this new detective, ends up dating a serial or a killer who is then the secret daughter of a killer. And it's like all these stupid little, like, haha, surprise moments that just feel cheap to me. I don't know if it's fair to think that they're cheap, but I just don't like it. I don't have fun being, like, having that sprung on me. It's hard to explain.
I do think that
How do I say it?
your season 1 is very grounded, and this one feels almost like a detective novel in terms of, like, who double crossing secret agents, and everyone's connected to everybody, and, like, there's so many prolific killers in one area. Like, it's very dramatic. Like, it's just not realistic. It's very concentrated. I don't know if this is any...
I think it's especially annoying because there's not even hints at these things beforehand, which
the secret, like, the secret daughter one is really
daughter.
bad.
Even in season 1, I had a problem suspending my disbelief enough to be like, really? You have I get it that in season 1, Dexter, like, it was such a trauma that he blocked it all out, and only now he's starting to unlock these repressed memories. So I guess, like, it's possible that he could have had this secret relationship that we don't know about, but it still feels cheap to me. And then in season 4, they do it again, but in multiple ways, and it's doubly frustrating. There was also, so I'm just looking at my notes here, and I'm going to go through specific things that you will know more what I'm talking about versus the audience, but whatever. Okay, so I have wrote here, Dexter is lying for no reason to create drama, whereas before it was the truth created drama, which I really loved. That kind of goes away. They show Trinity having a happy family when Dexter's kind of stalking him and trying to... Because Dexter, a big part of this season as well, is that Dexter wants to kill Trinity, because this is what Dexter does. He hunts and kills the bad people killers, and this guy is killing innocent people. The Trinity Killer is murdering innocent people. So that guy fits Dexter's code of, you're killing people who don't deserve to be killed, so now I get to kill you. So a big part of the show is Dexter trying to hunt Trinity, and then Trinity counter-hunting him. It's a cat-and-mouse game. And at one point, Dexter sees into Trinity's home. He assumes Trinity is like him, where he's a loner, he's a faker, he fakes his relationships, he doesn't have true connection to anybody. And one night when he's stalking Trinity, he watches Trinity go home, and, like, his whole family is so excited to see him, and they're all like, yay, Dad, you're home. And he's got a loving wife, and Dexter is stalking him and follows him to church even. And at church, they're all holding hands and smiling and cuddling. As the season goes on, you find out that the Trinity Killer is like a complete abusive piece of shit and his family's terrified of him, which is why they tolerate him and why they can't do anything to him, because John Lithgow, even, he's 6'4", which they make a point of pointing out in the show. It's like, this guy is huge. He's really tall and scary and intimidating. There is no world where a family that's trapped and scared of their dad like this is going to be putting on this happy family show. Like, it was done specifically for us as an audience to see and for Dexter to see, but the actual reality of their family dynamic would make that, I feel, impossible. Do you know
I
what I'm
think
talking
that's
about?
fair. I think that's a fair, like everyone acting overjoyed, and like, because even in the scenes in which that they are, that facade breaks away, it's shown that even in when he's comfortable with their acting, they're not comfortable or happy. Like,
Yeah,
it's very
they're still
clearly
scared.
fake. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, that scene, like, it's cool in the moment, and then you forget about it as the show goes on. But of course, me being me, I think back on that, and I'm like, that was bullshit. That was literally put in the show for the audience, and that's annoying. It's lazy to me. There also was the whole thing of, like, he catches the Trinity Killer fucking 3 or 4 times in the season, and he gets away 3 or 4 times.
Okay,
It's like, God, come on with this. There was another specific instance where Batista and LaGuerta, 2 of the other detectives that are fairly prominent characters in the show, they end up dating. But they're they have to disclose it to HR because they're coworkers, and one is the boss of the other one, and so they're worried about it. And I feel what is completely out of character is Batista doesn't want to go to the higher ups and disclose their relationship, while LaGuerta, who is the lead, she is a lieutenant. What's the word? Sergeant?
Lieutenant, I think.
I think lieutenant. She's in charge of everybody. She's like the head of their little Miami Metro PD. So she's in charge of all the detectives and all the cops. Batista is a detective. He's one rung below LaGuerta, but they're in a relationship. And Batista, who historically in the show is an unbelievably sweet man. He's very genuine, romantic, and nice. He's a very romantic dude. And even at one point in season 1, Dexter says to him, he says, if I could be like anybody, I would be like you, Angel. And his name is Angel Batista. And Angel's like, I don't know what that means, but thank you, man. Because, of course, to Dexter, he himself doesn't consider himself to really be a person. He's just a shell, which he kind of refers to himself as a couple times, I believe. So he's kind of admitting something actually very vulnerable in that moment, and it is very sweet, whether you understand Dexter or not. And Batista even says, like, I don't really get what that means, but thanks, man. I really like that moment, and that reminded me of it, talking about Batista.
Interesting. Yeah,
so anyways, what?
No, I didn't have anything. Go on.
Okay, so Batista is romantic and sweet and thoughtful, and LaGuerta ends up going to her boss and discloses the relationship and just makes the executive decision, because Batista and LaGuerta don't really know what to do about it. They're enjoying their secret little fling, but they don't want to like complicate things and have people start rumors or see, it just complicates stuff when you're dating a coworker, especially one that's a boss and employee relationship. So anyways, LaGuerta goes to her boss and tells them that they're dating, and Batista gets mad at her for this. When in my mind, Batista as a character would never fucking get mad about that. Of course it's the right thing to do.
No, you're right.
And then guess what? 2 episodes later, where we forget about this, they bring up this conversation, and Batista's like, look, you went to the bosses and told them about our relationship, and that was a really good thing to do. I'm like, what the fuck? You were just mad about it last episode. What are you talking about? It was the right thing to do. Like, it's just, this is the shit that I'm seeing. I'm like, man, they don't know what the fuck they're doing with any of these characters anymore. They're creating drama for no fucking reason. They're making characters act out of character to create drama, and it was pissing me off.
Wait, are you mad about that? I thought you liked all the things you were listing.
I'm mad.
Oh shit! Sorry, you have to explain. I was channeling Dexter in that moment. I actually so my complaints about Deb in my mind are what you're describing, and I think what I wasn't being fair is the whole cast does this. Characters will do things that I'm like, you're doing this. The only upside in your mind is that this other person never finds out. That is the only reason you would do Why would you do this? You're putting yourself in a dishonest position just to be dishonest. That's how a lot of these characters behave arbitrarily. And yes, I do agree with you. And like, you're right. If that happens in season 4, that's a lot of what happens in 5 through 8. That type of behavior with all the characters. Deb is like, they just make Deb almost the exclusive person to do that in the later seasons.
That's annoying. See, because the thing is, again, I would encourage you to rewatch the show. Deb is consistent. She wears her emotions on her sleeve, so the writers themselves outlined this character so perfectly that it felt to me like they had an easy time writing her, because maybe I'm missing things because I had almost a bias and favoritism towards Deb. Don't get me wrong, she definitely did things that pissed me off. And I'm like, oh, just shut the fuck up. Like, get out of here. Stop being dramatic. Like, oh my God, stop being mean about that. You don't need to. But it felt consistent to her character and it felt human. Whereas the little things like I just described between Batista and LaGuerta, it's just completely out of left field and doesn't make any sense for either character. Whereas Deb was very consistent the whole show to me. And I really liked that.
She's the one who kills LaGuerta. She chooses that over writing out Dexter. Oh man, they had such a good ending set up to getting him caught. But anyway, yes, I agree. That's fucking lame. There's no way around it. It sucks.
Then there's another point here. I'm just going down my bullet point list here of things I was specifically texting to myself to bring up when I was watching the show. I was like, oh my God, I have to bring this up. There's a scene. So turns out the Trinity killer has a secret daughter who's dating one of the detectives, and she's doing this specifically so she can infiltrate and find out information. She realizes she has repressed trauma as well. And the trauma that she has repressed is that it's so funny having to say this out loud. Trinity starts one of his murderous cycles by taking a woman and killing her in her bathtub with his daughter, and he tells his daughter to wait in the car. And the daughter, who is this reporter that's dating Detective Quinn, that I just explained, she realizes, she's like, wait, Dad, I gotta talk to you. When you told me to wait in the car, I didn't, and I watched you murder a woman in her bathtub. I actually burst out laughing in this episode. I'm like, are you... Okay. The idea that this guy brought his fucking daughter... Because, by the way, this kill that he does is like, it's a ritual. It's not something he just does like willy-nilly out of nowhere. He was probably in that house for like 2 fucking hours.
Yeah, no, you're
right. And he's like, hey, daughter, just chill. Just give me like 120 minutes. I'll be right back. Like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Okay, put on this episode of, oh fuck, I fucked up my bit. Go on.
It was like, I'm like, okay, this show is fucking bananas. It is so stupid and dumb that like, this is the best thing they could think of for writing like Trinity's, a repressed memory for Trinity's daughter to confront her father with. I don't know. Crazy to me. Crazy that they thought like this is the best way that we do this. So that part was hilarious to me. There was another specific part. This is actually the last specific note I have. Specifically about this specific part was towards the end of the season, Dexter. This is the cat and mouse game. Trinity is now tailing Dexter. He's following Dexter to, because basically Dexter has been using a fake name this whole time to get close to Trinity. He's befriended Trinity. What he does is he stalks Trinity, then he confronts him and befriends him with a fake identity to try to infiltrate Trinity's life and figure out like how he's able to kill so efficiently for so long and not get caught and all this stuff. Well, Trinity figures out finally that Dexter lied to him about his identity, so now Trinity is following Dexter to figure out who he really is. And so Trinity ends up following Dexter to Dexter's work and ends up going inside. The issue I have, not only was that whole scene of him wandering around inside the building just ludicrous, which we'll get to in a minute, but that Trinity, in his gigantic fucking black van, is following Dexter like 300 feet behind him. less than that, 50 feet behind him, just blatantly tailing and following Dexter to his place of work. Now, normally you would think, okay, that's fine. Maybe he's just not paying attention. But number one, this is the thing I was talking about, details. In season 1, Dexter immediately figures out he's being tailed by Dokes when Dokes starts following him.
Oh, yeah.
Instantly knows. So Dexter is acutely aware of his surroundings, and he knows what to look for and where to look. There is a 0% chance he wouldn't notice a gigantic black van, not a minivan. This is a full-size van following him. He would notice that. Second of all, he knows that this specific van is Trinity's van, because this is the van that Trinity has been using all season to like get to places and bring his supplies and kill people and transport them. And Dexter knows this because he's been in the van, he's worked with Trinity, he knows the specific car, and it's a gigantic car that sticks out like a sore thumb. And he just doesn't notice him following him to his fucking place of work? Crazy.
Yeah, I was actually going to bring up, and is he aware that Trinity is still out there, or is this at the point where he's not concerned about the guy? I can't remember.
Oh no, this is when he's like actively trying to hunt Trinity still and kill him.
Then he should be also extra vigilant in general too. So there's even less of an excuse.
Yeah, because this is happening too. This is the final, like, 5th time that Trinity has escaped Dexter's capture. So Trinity is basically on the run because Dexter is after him, and the whole police force knows who Trinity is at this point too. So he's basically being hunted by everybody. And yeah, it just doesn't make any sense. And then when Trinity gets to the building, he ends up like pickpocketing somebody's visitor badge and puts it on himself so that he can walk around the building, which, by the way, there was a cop standing within arm's reach of Trinity when he took this woman's like visitor badge. So the cop would have seen that. Oh well, pretend that they don't see that. Second of all, Trinity goes up exactly to Dexter's floor perfectly, somehow knows exactly what floor he's on that he works on. Then they have the entire Trinity case laid out on bulletin boards and the walls and the desks in this conference room that Trinity just walks in. There's no one standing there. The blinds aren't closed. The door isn't locked. He just walks right in.
I don't
as a
remember
visitor.
this at all. Holy crap. I don't remember all those details.
It is ludicrous. He just walks in there and looks at everything. He's like, "Oh wow, you guys are really figuring it out." He's a cocky, confident guy because he's a serial killer who's like, whatever. And yeah, and then he ends up walking into the room, and Dexter sees him. They look at each other, and Dexter's like, "Oh my god, you figured out who I am." It just the season comes to a head in such an unbelievable way that I was exhausted by the end of it, and I was like, "This is so fucking stupid. I hate this." And spoiler alert, I guess. Maybe we don't even have to discuss the specific event, but the way that the show ended.
Do you have a problem with that? What? I want to hear. Not that I don't believe you. I'm just curious.
Fuck it. We'll just say Rita dies. Rita ends up getting killed by Trinity. Oh, also, another secret spoiler thing. We forgot. Trinity kidnaps children and then buries them in cement. So this is part of his cycle, is he like kidnaps a boy and murders him. Then he kills a woman. It turns out it's like all his family basically has died in tragic ways, and he's like killing them as a way to sort of immortalize what happened to his family and himself, technically, because he's killing the little boys, pretending that it's him, calling them Arthur. I don't know. It's complete fucking nonsense bullshit. Surprise, we didn't know that he was doing any of this, but he is. Another thing that was annoying. So he ends up killing Rita, which is really tragic and it's really sad. I found myself getting very emotional looking at her sitting there dead in the tub. I was like, man,
yeah, you really
do. Yeah, Rita, she's so sweet. She's such a nice woman. There was also moments with her, though, in season 4 where I'm like, she wouldn't be getting this upset about this kind of stuff.
She does get a little, like, we're writing this character out energy.
Yeah, for like, for how hard they made her go after Dexter in the first few seasons. Like, she actively pursues Dexter in many ways. Because Dexter is so reserved and doesn't share very much, she, on multiple occasions, is trying to pull things out of him. Like, I want to get to know you, Dexter. I want to know the real you. Like, I love you. I want to be close to you and connect to you. She she cares for Dexter so much, and she's so forgiving and understanding for so many of his quirks and his issues. And then in this final season, suddenly she's just getting really pissed off at him all the time for stupid shit, overreacting to things, you know, whatever. They kind of ruin her character too. But for the most part, for the large majority of the show, she's really sweet and great. She dies. But get this, the only reason Trinity was able to kill her was because she forgot something and had to go back from the airport.
Oh yeah, because he had sent her and her kids off to Disney.
That's correct. He calls a cab and he's like, look, let's just, because they didn't have a honeymoon. That's the whole thing of this. And Rita's like, you know what? Fuck it. Let's have a honeymoon. And he's like, all right, that sounds great. I love you. Like,
oh, I forgot. They had just they had just like kind of had their moment and they're all good now.
Yes. Yeah. And they're like, they've made up to each other after this long season of back and forth and arguing. And even Rita like kisses another man at one point. It was so fucking dumb, all stupid. And they finally make up, and he calls a cab, and it's like 3 p.m., and he sends them to the airport. He's like, look, I have to deal with work, but you guys go off. I'm going to meet you there at the wherever they're going. I don't remember.
Yeah, it's Disney World.
No, that's where the kids are sent. And that's why they're alone.
Right, they go somewhere else. Okay.
Yeah, they were just going to go, Cuba or whatever. I don't know. Where do people go? Whatever. They don't go to Cuba. They go to, what am I thinking of? Puerto Rico?
Jamaica? I don't know what you're thinking of, brother.
Anyways, just like a nice island where people go for a lavish vacation. Anyways, he sends her off, and then turns out she like gives him a call later. It's woven into the plot. If you watch it, you'll know what I'm talking about. Calls him later and is like, "Oh, Dexter, sweetie, I'm sorry, I forgot. I'm such an idiot. We rushed out of the house. I forgot my ID, so I have to go home and get it." That's when Trinity is there and kills her. So like the whole cliffhanger to the season, the punchline to the season was that it just like happened by accident.
I forget, like, see, that's one of those things in the moment you get suckered in with like the moment. You don't think about like, oh, she only dies because, or no. She leaves a message for him. Is that what? She
calls Dexter because Dexter's is actively killing Trinity because he's kidnapped Trinity and he's like killing him. That's why
I thought he was calling her to leave her a message. No, you're right. Then nope.
No.
What the fuck?
It's purely by accident. And the thing is, Dexter, because as you're saying, the moment that you figure out what's happened to Rita is very intense and it's really scary. And it's well done. But when you dissect it and you realize why it happened, it's kind of flimsy. And that's Dexter ends up finally killing Trinity, captures him, kills him, dumps him into the bay, and he's feeling happy. And now he's gonna go meet his wife at the wherever they are, and he's feeling happy. So he gets home and he's narrating some romantic stuff and feeling good. And he realizes like Rita's purse is on the chair. He's like, what? And he listens to a voicemail, and it's Rita saying, "Hey, honey, I forgot that I forgot my ID." And so then he like calls her back and hears her cell phone in the house in her purse, and he picks it up and he's like, "Oh my God, she should have been in wherever we were going 5 hours ago. What's going on?" And then suddenly he hears his son, which Rita and Dexter have a son, by the way, in season 3, I think, or 4. They have a little baby boy. And suddenly he hears Harrison, their baby, crying upstairs. And as the audience, you're like, oh my fucking God, what happened? And he runs up there and Rita's dead in a bathtub, just like the show kind of opened with Trinity Killer murdering a woman in a bathtub. That's how it opens. So it's like a total gut punch. And it's so impactful. And you're like, oh my fucking God, I can't believe they did this. And then you dissect it and you're like, wait, so it was just an accident that she happened to be back home? Maybe, what could I say, Trinity intentionally took her ID and hid it so that she has to come back, but then I'm like giving the show more credit than they probably deserve because they don't mention that at all or imply it at all. Trinity doesn't even taunt Dexter before he gets killed. Like, he gets killed by Dexter.
Like, it's because the implication is Trinity had already killed Rita by the time Dexter gets home. Or by the time Dexter gets to him. Yeah, so it is weird, isn't it? But like, there's something cold and calculated about having no last taunting message of just like, that's what you get for fucking with me as I take you down with me, you know?
He did say it's already over or something like that, and then Dexter.
Yeah, because if I'm not mistaken, the final confrontation isn't as like combative. Like he seems very like succumbed to
accepting
a loss.
But the problem is he wouldn't have killed Rita if he wasn't feeling so vengeful and angry at Dexter. Why would he do this? So he has to have intense feelings towards Dexter. Otherwise, why would he do that?
But he feels like that. How do I word this? He will get more satisfaction with Dexter of finding out after he's dead, and he can't have that conversation. That will torture Dexter more than taunting him while he's alive. Like that's what I envision a more cruel way. That's in my mind. That's how the Trinity Killer's thinking, at least.
He's so obtuse the whole show.
Yeah, he's so very enigmatic.
He's so overt about everything he does, where like at one point at home, he breaks his son's hand because he's pissed off at something his kid did, where he like, they're watching football and pretending everything's nice, and he gives his son a high five, but then just like grabs his hand really hard, and his son's like, "Dad, what are you doing?" And he just like rips his pinky and breaks it. So he has, I don't know, it just doesn't. I could see the ice truck killer doing something like that, but I can't see Trinity doing something like that. Especially because Trinity is so emotional. He can't kill a deer early, and he like, it just didn't feel right to me. And it was all a setup so that they could, gut punch the audience, but then it just didn't fit for me.
I think that's a good point. I think that giving benefit of the doubt, you could make it make sense, but I think at the same time, it doesn't necessarily have earned that benefit.
Like you said, yeah, you could take my point where maybe he intentionally hid something to make her come back.
And like I think that.
And then I don't know.
I will concede the setup is not justified. I can't think of a good reason of like, oh, he planned on her missing. So like, if they cut the voicemail part out of it, I think it makes sense. Like, and then all of a sudden is like he caught her before she left. Like that just makes sense in your head. You don't need to like see it happen.
So that's the thing. They didn't need to show. That's actually how you fix it. They didn't need to show Rita actively leave. All they needed to do was show Rita packing up, ready to go with a cab out front, and Dexter is like, okay, hey, sweetie, like, yeah, cab's out there ready to go. I'm sorry I have to rush out of here but I gotta go for the job. Like, see ya. And Dexter leaves. That would have been.
It could even just be as simple as like she goes up to the cab, realizes, oh, I forgot my purse, and then they like cuts this like the idea that like you don't see her go back. But like my point is like
they could have done it way better than
it is one of those things accident. Is addition by subtraction. By taking it away, I'm no longer questioning it. But now by giving me details, you've now put a specific scenario in mind that doesn't make sense. So now you've ruined your own like fiction by doing that.
Well said. Yeah, addition by subtraction. Yeah. So I was honestly not super looking forward to talking about season 4 because you liked it so much, and I knew I was going to be poking holes in it. And because you're a smart, understanding dude, you'd be like, "What you're doing now?" Be like, "Oh yeah, that makes sense. Didn't think about that. Oh yeah, that." So
yeah, I am better than you. I do know that.
Yes, I agree. So I was not. I don't know. I have fun dissecting things like this and talking about things and having these conversations. It's so great, but I was a bit sad to potentially be kind of squashing something for you. I have
softened on my love for Dexter every year for the past 10 years, right? Like, the more distance I have from the property, the less I feel like it's special to me.
That's good.
Other than, I think season 1 of Dexter is just a really fun season of television. It's no so longer an important season of television, the way that, like, I think as I've gotten older, I'm able to, it's not true of everything, but like separate that, like, I don't know. I don't have a lot of personal energy in this of like, I don't care that you didn't.
Sure. Okay.
And I think realistically, I think I like it less over time. And I know how bad it gets that it's like, it could have been on accident that season 1 is good. That's kind of how I feel. The good seasons are on accident.
Yeah, it's sort of like bands that have the one really good album where it's like, they spent the first 10 years of them being together writing and perfecting this, and then suddenly it's a hit and they realize, oh fuck, we have to make more of this, and then they're, in 2 years they make another album that's just not as good because they didn't cook as long. That's how this one feels, where it's like, although from what I read, I'm pretty sure only the first like 3 episodes follow the book, and then it diverts quickly afterwards.
Yeah, it diverts hard and fast.
Yeah.
Like, because Dexter's family is much more relevant in the narrative overall than it is in the show.
Okay.
Like, the fact about his mom, like, you get much more details about his mom, and like the dad character is not also a moral beacon of light, but he is visited by him. His sister Deb is in it, but she's a lot less. Like, they're a lot less close, but the brother's deeply involved. It's just, and I think there's even more family members, but yeah, it's much more about the family than the show really is about family.
Okay, that's interesting. They do a decent job of revealing that Harry is not a moral beacon of light in the show. Over time, you find out he like cheated on his wife with his CIs, and
I think there's almost like this Dexter when he's talking to his dad is like this naive child of like a kid talking to his dad. So it kind of the way that a kid looks at their parent, right? As this objectively correct moral being of they know how the world works. What they tell me how to do it, that will fix it. When in reality, they're just people that were in their 30s trying to raise children.
Yeah, and like, how are you supposed to? You have to reconcile with the fact that your kid is a serial killer, and you know that, and he has no. How do you? Whoa, surprise burp! How do you raise a serial killer? Like, Harry did the best he could.
Do they show that in the first 4 seasons? Because there is a whole story arc specifically of like Harry, like being like he almost kills Dexter, like. He almost just like, this kid is going to kill people and I can't stop him. Is it right for me to allow something like this to grow up? Like, did you ever, that never comes up, right?
I don't think they
because they make Harry much, like when you said they're exploring that he wasn't a moral beacon, is like they keep unveiling more and more of how much that he struggled with coming up with this code. And this wasn't his first attempt at trying to help Dexter and stuff.
Yeah, so. He struggled so much that he killed himself, which they reveal towards the end of, I don't even remember which season, 2 maybe, or 3 or 1. I don't know.
It's either 1, 2, 3, or 4. I don't know.
Yeah, one of those 4. That kind of bummed me out too. Like, man, really? They couldn't have just let him die? He had to kill himself too, and now you're telling me that he even tried to kill Dexter, and Dexter he's not bothered by that, or did he repress the memory? I don't know. I don't care.
Him almost trying to kill Dexter. This is a personal, like a introspective, like he has a gun, he's thinking about it. It's not like he is up and has the gun pointed to his son's head. Like the child never knew. It's more of the like, it shows that he was struggling with dark, he wasn't always I love my son no matter what. Like he definitely was like, I wish this kid was dead kind of energy for a little bit. And how does that guy deal with it? And they make him much more of that spirit becomes much more of a human being, and Dexter relies on him less and less as he grows up a little bit, and sees him less naively. So there is some cool stuff later on the show. I just think that I don't know what happened. I don't even like to speculate because it's not interesting, because it's just like it could be anything. It's there's so many bad decisions that it's like I don't even know what one feels like the big one. I don't even understand what went wrong.
I mean, as with every fucking based on source material thing works, when they stop following the source material, they fucking ruin it. It happens without fail. And that's
I'm sure there's exceptions that prove the rule, but I think the premise, I think what it shows is having a vision from your start, middle, end before you start is objectively a strong blueprint. So it's not about deviating from the source as much as if you deviate just to have more creative control, or it's because I want instead the story to be about Harry's, and I want this to be the more like where we end with this character, then it would work. But I just don't think that's usually what ends up happening. It's just like, almost like I just want to do something different for the sake of it. The subvert expectations for subverting's sake rather than because my subversion is interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, and you know, that's what happens with these shows that blow up. That's why limited series are usually so good.
Yep,
Because they have a
exactly.
start, middle, and end. It's deliberate, but this is like, we have this really cool idea. It's based on a book series. Maybe it's a hit. Let's see what happens, and then it is. And you go, okay, well, fuck, now we have to do this for the next 10 years. Okay, buckle up.
Yeah.
Hope we can just keep stringing people along and making shit up that'll be interesting. Yeah, whatever. They just needed to follow the books. It probably would have been fine. I don't know anything about the books. I don't know if they're even good, but
I don't think they are. Not that they're bad, but I don't think they're particularly good either. I just think they're
okay.
I think it's an interesting premise that like I think that people like, but they're not like bestsellers, and I don't think they're particularly well reviewed by critics. They're just interesting book series. Something that like I'm sure people would like, but as a non-avid reader, I don't know that it's worth like dipping your toes into that for. Because I don't know if you remember Samantha Carroll.
Yes.
She's the one who introduced me to the show, but she had the
Wait,
books.
Was she the girl that lived in like Rhode Island or whatever?
No, she went to high school with us.
Oh, you're talking about Sam.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, that girl's name was Holly. Okay, I know who you're talking about.
No, there was even another girl. Not Holly. I don't know. It was a different girl. I have $1 from her. She sent me $1, like
what the fuck are you talking
like actually 20 years ago. Yeah, she wrote on it. It was for my birthday. She wrote "Happy Birthday" with permanent marker and like colored it with highlighters and shit. And I have that $1, but I don't remember what the girl's name was. But it was just one of those girls where you had like an IM relationship with her for some reason. I don't know how you've met them. But
look, middle school and it was a crazy time. All right.
Well, Holly was the one that was in New Jersey or something. And then there was this other girl that...
The only other girl I remember speaking a lot to was Jen from Texas that I knew through Jake.
That's who it was. It was Jen.
Oh, yeah. So I did meet her in person. So it does... And it was also a mutual friend of Jake's, so at least that made some sense. Okay. Yes. You did meet her, though. I don't know if you remember that. She came to our house.
Yeah, I do. I vaguely remember that.
All right. These are all very important parts of the Dexter lore.
So about Dexter.
But she introduced me to the show, and she had the books, and I had read like the first half of the first book, and I remember it's also written very like weirdly. Like the guy who it's written from Dexter's point of view, and he is not well.
Huh.
Kind of like there's this one book you were telling me about when you read it in like high school. Something with knife in the title, I think. But like,
oh yeah, The Knife of Never Letting Go.
Yeah, I think that was written in a very kind of like erratic thought pattern. Like it wasn't a very like, you know, I woke up feeling kind of hungry today. Like it wasn't written that way. Am I crazy?
The Knife of Never Letting Go was, I mean, it was a young adult book. I don't quite remember it anymore, but it was about
not necessarily like what the plot was, just the writing style,
the way it was written. Well, the plot is indicative of the writing style, where it's like it takes place in a world where only men exist, and all of their thoughts are external. People have these like bubbles of thoughts, not physically, but like if you're near other people, you can hear them. You hear all of their thoughts. All of your thoughts are external, and so that is involved in the writing because it is chaotic listening, you know, being in a group of people and you can hear everyone's thoughts at all times. And it is, there's moments in it where it is like, yeah, it's very hectic and hard to parse.
I gotcha.
You know,
okay.
The plot, infers that or indicates that. I don't know what word I'm trying to think of. Anyways, this has been going on a long time. We're on an hour 40 here. And, I still want to do music recommendations because I think it's fun.
Oh yeah,
so
let's wrap that up. I don't have anything else to say about Dexter, so that's all.
Yeah, it's Dexter season 1 is really fun and good, and then it's steadily downhill until season 4, where it's so much that I don't want to watch it anymore. So that's how it went the very first time I watched the show, and that's how it is now. I don't want to watch season 5. I don't care. So very much recommend season 1. Watch the rest at your own risk. So, music recommendation for today. We're going to keep this quick. It's called Henderson Century. HenderSon Century, like the 21st century. Henderson Century. This stuff is weird. It's the best way I can describe it is is like country shoegaze emo.
What?
Very weird and hard to explain, but it's really fucking good, and it's like kind of emotional, and the album is called Special Fear. It's short, it's only 9 songs, and the songs are only 2 or 3 minutes each, but it's way better than the words I chose to describe it. I may be inaccurately describing it, but it's very shoegaze heavy, and it's got a lot of layers and heavier kind of sounds to it. And he uses the acoustic guitar, I think, a lot in here, which is what gives me the country vibe, but he doesn't sing country. He sings just like normal.
So
and I call it emo because
folk?
it's sad. No, it's not folk.
Okay.
But yeah, you know, just, I don't know, maybe just like sad indie rock is how you could describe it too. Sad shoegaze, something like that. But it's really cool, and it has profound emotional impact on me every time I hear the songs. It's actually the guy Kraus. Remember that shoegaze album I had you listen to, Path, a long time ago? Yeah, it's his kind of like solo project, even though Kraus is also his solo project. I don't know, whatever. He does multiple things, right? And Kraus is much more traditional shoegaze, a lot like, wow, I keep having these burps because I think I'm inhaling so much from talking. But yeah, he has a shoe, whatever. Anyways, Henderson Century, it's really cool and interesting, and it's a quick listen. It's, you know, a 30-minute album, 20-minute album, but it's really good.
Okay, Henderson Century. All right, that sounds cool. And what was the name of the album again? Something Fear?
Special Fear.
Ooh, okay, Special Fear. I don't have a very emotionally profound band, but I have a metalcore band that's heavily inspired by Deftones. And the name of the band is Loathe. I think is one of my favorite bands out there right now. Very dark, atmospheric bands. They named their most recent album after the movie Let the Right One In.
Oh, wow, okay.
So that's the type of artistry these guys go for. Very atmospheric, very weird, industrial. It's very industrial. I know it's really dumb, but the lead singer is black, which is not really relevant, but I just love a minor, like, it's a very white genre. It's a very, like, Nordic genre in its roots. So to see people of color is always fun, and kind of like, I always like to shout that out just because it's like,
it's how Zeal and Ardor is.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Especially the song East of Eden is like the song I like to point to of, if this stuff is stuff you can stomach, then they only have like 2 albums and an EP, so they don't have a lot of music out there. But if it's up your alley, East of Eden is kind of like their, I think, a good sonically example of what kind of music to put out. And yeah, I love it. Their lyrics are they're written by people who are like English majors, not like kids who didn't finish high school. So.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah, that's the one thing.
Actual intelligence in there. Okay.
Yeah, and I'll say, like, with Knocked Loose, like, any band that I'm going to put on here are bands that I'm not going to be afraid to admit that I like. You know, there are some bands that you listen to, like, this is just like they copied the popular trend at the time, but I happen to like that trend. Like, it's just not good. It's just derivative of what is good, and you just want more of it. I feel like the 2 bands I named, Knocked Loose and Low, they're both like leaders of their sound right now. They have very distinct sounds. So
cool.
I'll list some non-metal bands in the future, but for now, that's really what I've been listening to for the past fucking 10 years.
Nice. Yeah, this Henderson Century I've been listening to also for about 5-6 years, and just mentioning it today because I heard one of their songs and was like, oh yeah, that's a cool album. So nice. I already added your rec to my list.
Oh, good luck.
I let it in and it took everything. Yeah, they named that after Let the Right One In.
Yep, they sure did. Their their album, The Cold Sun, there's a like merch they did that is just like it's written like it's an Akira poster. Like, it's written exactly like that. Like, they have references to that kind of, you know, cool shit, but it not being about that. It's just like, I don't know. People who
Yeah.
like the same art I do, I tend to be like, I think I just, it's not about like me pointing at the screen, oh, I recognize that, as much as like, well, if they appreciate the same art I do, it'll be, at least there might be something interesting here.
Nice.
Akira's the greatest anime of all time.
Yes, it is. That level of detail and physical animation, hand drawn animation, is mostly lost. Other than Ghibli, which, by the way, we need to watch and talk about The Boy and the Heron.
Me and Brianna were talking about watching Boy and the Heron before this podcast was started. So if that
Cool.
that would be a good one. But next week is not going to be Boy and the Heron. What are we doing next week?
Next week, we're going to bring back our old boy Carvester Stallone, a.k.a. Carver, who I also call him Carvey Weinstein. I got a lot of names for him.
That's a good one he wants, yeah.
So, yeah, Carver's coming back. We're doing another Magic episode. It's going to be rebalancing 5 banned cards. We're going to take 5 cards that were legal in Standard at the time they were printed and ended up getting banned in Standard. And we're going to rebalance them in what we would think would make them balanced. And then we're going to share that and talk about it. And we're all going to balance the same 5 cards, but hopefully all of our balancing tweaks and knobs will be different. And so it'll be really fun.
Yeah, we did a collaborative list, but we're going to all rebalance them differently. I'm sure it'll be a real quick episode, just like this was.
Yes, real quick and
concise.
Yeah, we're probably going to do more Magic podcasts, because the more we talk about it, the more we realize how much and how many different things we could talk about that are Magic related, and it gets us excited, and it's always fun to have Carver on here. But hopefully we won't overload it, or maybe we'll have to make our separate podcast for just Magic stuff. I don't know, but for now,
if someone were to make an actual personal recommendation, we'd probably review it. But since
for sure,
people are leaving it up to us, that's what's going to happen.
Yep. So that's it. Next week is rebalancing 5 banned cards in Standard. Real exciting.
All right. Well, I'm going to go and not watch Dexter. I can't think of a good outro. That was bad.
I am going to go and not do this anymore. How's that?
Thanks for listening, everyone. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Yep. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.